The concept of planetary health connects physical and mental well-being to social systems and ecological health. The discourse around planetary health relates health inequality to the legacy of colonialism and to racism today, whilst also recognising cultural differences in how people relate to the planet. By creatively engaging with planetary health, art, design and the humanities could help to integrate ecological regeneration and restorative justice. The COVID-19 pandemic and the climate emergency are symptoms of the underlying social, ecological crisis, a complex of wicked problems and injustices that can only be resolved with new ways of thinking. Warning that 1 million species face extinction, the United Nations has called for transformative change, which they define as a fundamental, system-wide reorganisation across technological, economic and social factors, including paradigms, goals and values. Planetary Health offers a vital focus. Set out as a manifesto in 2014 by Richard Horton and colleagues at the Lancet Medical Journal, Planetary Health is defined as the health of human civilization and the natural systems on which it depends. Western medical science is based on systems within the human body. Planetary Health broadens health research to include the external systems that sustain or threaten human health. Planetary Health draws on the work of the Stockholm Resilience Institute, which has identified 9 planetary boundaries in the Earth system. 4 of these boundaries have already been breached. Climate change, near the top of this diagram. Moving clockwise, we come to nitrogen and phosphorus overload, mostly from agriculture. Continuing on, we come to land system change, and at the top, destruction of biosphere integrity. Research shows that it was the destruction of biosphere integrity driven by land system change that enabled the COVID-19 virus to pass from wild animals to humans in 2019. Soon, forest destruction may be recognised in international law as the crime of ecocide, but it can already be seen as an aesthetic tragedy. Tropical rainforests are home to the most significant biodiversity in the world. But to see tropical forests as places of uninhabited nature is not just a mistake, it is an insult. Tropical forests have been nurtured for thousands of years by indigenous communities, such as the people of the Dongria Khond in northern India. Dongria Khond means protector of streams, and these people successfully opposed a mining project by the Vedanta Corporation that would have destroyed their forests and streams and erased their culture. Tropical forests are key to reversing climate breakdown because they lock up so much carbon. In the Amazon, the ancient practice of burying charcoal improves soil fertility by holding water, minerals and nutrients, but it also stores carbon for thousands of years. Research by the Rights and Resources Initiative shows that by maintaining the integrity of their forests, Indigenous peoples and local communities manage 300,000 million tonnes of carbon. The world depends on tropical forests for medicines, including anaesthetics, antibiotics, cancer drugs, contraceptives, muscle relaxants and pain relievers. So who would destroy tropical forests and why? Well, among the worst destroyers of tropical rainforests are producers of palm oil. Research by the Rainforest Action Network shows that popular snack foods contain illegal palm oil produced on destroyed rainforest land, even in wildlife reserves. Meanwhile, cattle ranching, which began under Spanish and Portuguese colonisation, accounts for 80% of Amazonian deforestation today. Amazonian beef is sold in China and in the UK, in Burger King, the military and the NHS. And corned beef from cattle ranched in the Amazon is sold in UK supermarkets, Asda, Lidl, Morrisons and Sainsbury's. John Middleton, President of the UK Faculty of Public Health, has charted the drivers of emerging infectious diseases. The two highest are land use change and food industry change. The lowest driver is bushmeat. Yet with the outbreak of COVID-19, English language media ignored the risks of industrial meat production and focused instead on wet markets where wild animals are slaughtered and sold for food and traditional medicine. Medical research does show that wet markets enable zoonotic disease transmission, but the way that the media framed this as the source of the pandemic played on a racialised fear of contamination. Both the origin of the pandemic and its impacts have been subject to a racialised framing that has delayed an accurate diagnosis. At first, media reports said that the COVID-19 virus does not discriminate. True enough. But the pandemic has had a devastating impact on people of colour. In June 2020, Public Health England acknowledged that people of colour face disproportionate risks of catching COVID-19 and of dying from it. The causes include a combination of housing, occupation and income inequalities, all of which are compounded by racism and discrimination. In his 2010 book, Sacrifice Zones, Steve Lerner describes how, in the USA, people of colour produce less pollution than white people, but are more exposed to it. The slow violence of air pollution was followed in 2020 by repeated lockdowns to limit the spread of a virus that attacks the lungs. Then came the deliberate suffocation of a black citizen by a white police officer. The last words of George Floyd rallied people around the world against his murder and against the structural racism that allowed it. Defending the right to breathe is a biopolitical struggle that connects the environmental and social justice movements. The Amazon forests are known as the lungs of the planet because they draw in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen. For decades, the photographer Sebastião Salgado has portrayed indigenous peoples in Amazonia. In 2020, he warned that these guardians of the forest face genocide from COVID-19 as President Bolsonaro encourages illegal logging and ranching on their land. This pattern of contemporary injustice continues the historical crimes of colonialism. Following the invasion of Latin America by Christopher Columbus in 1492, European colonizers committed countless atrocities in order to subjugate and enslave the indigenous peoples. From their own land, the indigenous people were forced to clear forests and then mine gold and silver, which the colonizers stole from them and took back to Europe. The colonizers also infected the indigenous peoples with diseases, including smallpox. As researchers at UCL and University of Leeds have shown, the resulting epidemics killed 90% of the indigenous people. So many people died that their civilization collapsed, and the land that they had cultivated for centuries reverted to forest. Jean Ray has declared that in the sixth mass extinction, it is no longer permissible to think genocide apart from ecocide. In the end game of modernity, these processes are knotted and unfold from the same supremacist logics and fantasies. What are the cultural roots of this disturbing phenomenon? In 1982, Fritjof Capra diagnosed what he called a crisis of perception in Western thinking, rooted in the dualistic separation of mind and matter which had been developed in the 17th century by René Descartes. Capra related the split between mind and body in Western medicine to the reductionist analysis of living systems, which focuses on their smallest functional units. In reductionist thinking, and in the mechanistic model of the universe, Capra saw misrecognitions driving conflict, ecological destruction, and physical and mental illness. Capra was influenced by Gregory Bateson, who related insights from psychology, anthropology, and systems theory to identify interconnected networks of the human, society, and ecosystem. Bateson focused on how these networks are all characterized by non-linear causality and dynamic feedback loops. Bateson's work informed Felix Guattari's thesis of the three ecologies, in which Guattari says, "To understand the interactions between ecosystems, the mechanosphere, and the social and individual universes of reference, we have to learn to think transversally." Transversal thinking challenges dualistic separations by cutting across categories and disciplinary boundaries and recognizing patterns and similarities between things that are conventionally kept apart. I believe that as practice-based researchers in art and design, thinking transversally is what we do. In this time of planetary sickness, political leaders have normalized the risk of disease and death in order to maintain business as usual. Yet responding like a collective immune system, many people have shown kindness and solidarity and cooperated to achieve a new balance between continuity and change. So how might artists and designers engage with this ambiguous time? And what insights might be drawn from the uncertainties and contradictions of the pandemic? To address these and other questions, Gabrielle Grigorieva and I are collaborating to offer a creative sanatorium for artists and designers. Sadly, it won't be at a spa in the mountains or a castle in the forest. It's just a set of 3 sessions online. But in an ethos of trust and respect, the aim is to begin exploring how creative interaction relates to mental well-being, social transformation, and planetary flourishing. Thanks for listening.